Day 2, back to the stream, trying to stay consistent. We still aren't anybody, so it doesn't matter. Today, we're just going to react to a couple other videos. I'm going to add a new segment here at the end of the week called the First 26, something that I learned for every year of my life. I guess I didn't learn fuck all, ever. So again, my name is Reezy. Welcome to the stream. I appreciate y'all being here. I just found this cool video with Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson. All hell's gonna break loose. So we're gonna start there.
Partly because you have something that marks you out from the norm, like a tilt towards autism, because it was just released with the Tavistock staff. The Tavistock closed down in the UK. That was the big gender surgery performing institute in the UK.
How is that closed down? What happened?
Government closed it down. So because they knew that they figured out in the UK that, wow, the rates of transgender transformation requests were skyrocketing. And even the people at the clinic knew that they were rushing people along the transformation pipeline way faster than they should have without proper clinical evaluation. There's 1,000 lawsuits out against the Tavistock in the UK now. Wow. 1,000. Out of, I think, 30,000 transition processes.
So what is the difference between the way the UK is processing this versus the way we are?
Well, we're still where the UK was 3 or 4 years ago. We haven't woken up to the fact that, all hell's going to break loose on this front with people like Chloe Cole.
Well, see, this is the thing, and I don't want to get attacked on the internet for it, but fuck it, nobody likes me anyway. I don't know how else to put this. So this alphabet mafia has totally brainwashed young, influential kids into thinking that it's okay to transform, or that's the proper thing to do, or if you're confused and you're probably not this or that. And I feel like this conversation needs to be toned back a bit. I feel like people shouldn't be talking about this, especially to young children, and talking about it open in public. I understand that they want to be just accepted as people, and I can give them that. I understand if you're going through something and you have a unique circumstance and you're an anomaly, that people need to respect your individual circumstance. But the thing is, you've made it so young, influential minds now don't see it as just a circumstantial anomaly. They see it as an option to their body dysphoria. And I've always been a fairly built young man, captain of the teams, and I have a fairly decent body. Right now I'm a fat fuck, but I've always had a fairly decent physique, and I have gone through body dysphoria. This has all gone a little bit too far, I feel like, is an understatement.
Launching lawsuits. That's the only thing that's ever going to stop this. Lawsuits, absolutely. Yeah. Or jail sentences. So, it's absolutely appalling. This is part of the reason that I felt like I've been at war for 6 months.
It's so crazy that what you're saying here, although it's backed by the literature, it's obvious you have an expertise in this area. This is labeled as transphobic.
Yeah,
this is a transphobic
Well, it's even worse than that, because the data, and this was known, let's say, 10 years ago, before this all became an issue. Ken Zucker in Toronto, he was the world's leading authority on transgenderism. He divided it into 2 parts. There's the autogynephilic types. Those are the guys who get sexual kicks from dressing up in women's clothing and then go do drag queen story hour. Say, well, we're just, pristine and pure. It's like, no, you're not. You're getting a sexual kick from dressing up in women's clothing. And let's not bloody well forget it. And you can't even say that now, but every clinician worth his salt knew that for decades. And then there's another subpopulation, and those are usually gender non-conforming kids. And, like a conservative skeptic might say there's no such thing. It's like, no, there is. So your typical gender non-conforming kid would be the perfect target for this, would be feminine boy or a masculine girl who's high in trait openness, so has kind of a mutable identity, who's also high in neuroticism. And there's lots of kids like that. And so they don't fit in that well with their peer group. They're tomboy girls or feminine boys. And then if you track a lot of them, some of them develop body dysmorphia. They're not very happy with themselves at puberty because they don't fit in. But Zucker showed very clearly, he ran the transgender treatment clinic at CAMH in Toronto for decades, and he was one of the world's leading authorities in terms of publication. I think he was the editor of the lead journal for years. They just took him out in Canada, fired him and disgraced him, and he battled on the lawsuit front for 10 years and was eventually vindicated. But he didn't have a political bone in his body. He was a clinician through and through, He wasn't playing political games, documenting autogynephilia. That was just clinical reality. Now it's become verboten to even suggest such a thing. Oh, there's nothing sexual about this. It's like, yeah, right.
Jordan Peterson's a fucking goat, dude. This guy has came out of nowhere and helped young men have a direct route or plan of action to be able to start taking control and fixing their fucking lives. He's amazing. And if you don't see what's going on in Canada right now, where they're threatening to take it away, or maybe they already did take away his his license to practice as a what was he again? A psychologist? Yes, a psychologist, author, YouTuber, and academic. I think it's just a demonstration of how fucked the world is currently, that Canada wants to take away his psychology degree or license because he doesn't act properly on social media, because he offends people, because he's standing up for truth rather than feelings. I feel like we're about to go through this transition period in the world right now where truth matters more than feelings, because I don't know how we got to the place that we're at, but it's not based in reality, and it's got to change.
You're dressing up in lingerie before your mirror at home, tucking your dick between your legs, imagining you have a vagina for a sexual kick. Oh, there was nothing sexual about that. Yeah, right. Bloody absolute liars. Now, then you have the kids who don't fit in on the gender front. That's a different pathway. But with them, if you leave them alone, so do no harm, leave them alone. 90% of them accept their body, their sex, by age 18 or 19. And 80% of them are gay. So what that also means is, and the gay community is going to wake up to this sooner or later, is that most of the kids being sterilized and mutilated are gay, 80% of them. So I don't see how the LGBT alliance is going to hold up under that sort of reality.
Huh, that's interesting. So what he's basically saying here is 80% of the people that end up transitioning currently are becoming some sort of trans, or at least going down that route of puberty blockers or anything of the sense. 80% of that community, if they were totally left alone, they probably would have been okay with their body by the time that they were age 18 or 19 years old. They would have come to terms with their body dysphoria, and they would have been happy with whatever body that they have. But 80% of those people would have ended up being gay. So now he's saying, how is the Alphabet Mafia going to come back to this? Because you know what's going to happen is, once all of this starts coming to light and all of these lawsuits keep happening here in the Western society, just like it is in Western Europe, once all of these lawsuits and everything start coming through and everything starts to crumble, and all of these kids are upset that the government let them start making these decisions at such young ages, or told parents that they weren't allowed to make decisions. Like here in Canada right now, if I have a kid that's 5 years old that starts saying that it wants to transition and I disagree with it, the Canadian authorities can take away my fucking child. When all of this starts coming to light, that they're pushing this on people that don't actually want it, when it starts to crumble, I don't know how the Alphabet Mafia is going to stay together, but I guess we'll see.
So, yeah. That's for sure, man.
What a crazy
and
situation.
Here, let's add something equally ugly to it, since we haven't gone far enough yet. So here, we'll do a little bit of arithmetic. So, a while back, Disney executive mentioned on video, this is when Florida went after Disney, was all when this was happening. She came out and said, I think she was head of domestic programming for Disney. She said, well, I have two children, 5 and 7. One is trans and the other is pansexual. And I just thought mathematically right away, it's like the chance you have a trans kid is 1 in 3,000. That's not a very high chance. And let's say the chance that you have a pansexual kid is the same. Whatever pansexual means, I don't even know how to calculate those odds. But whatever that is rarer than trans, because no one ever even heard about it until 5 years ago. So the joint probability that you have a trans kid and a pansexual kid is 1 in 9 million. The odds that you're a pathological narcissist sacrificing your own children to the glorification of your compassion is 8,999,999 to 1.
Wow. So that actually really makes me think, man, fucking how many people do you think are going through these LGBTQ Alphabet Mafia problems because it's been imposed by their parents, because their parents are on the left-wing agenda? How many, what do you think, like 1 out of 10, you know, how many of these kids out of every 10 of them do you think are actually choosing to go through all of this themselves? Or because they're young and influenceable, their parents have some sort of ideology on the way that the world is, and is trying to be over-accepting and pushing on their children to have blue hair or be gay or you know, whatever the other fucking 10 letters in the alphabet stand for. How many of those kids do you think make those choices themselves? I'd like to hear in the comments.
So, like, do you have a trans kid and a pansexual kid? Or are you a devouring mother? Well, you can look at the odds and decide for yourself.
Jesus.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah!
No kidding. Look, man, Freud was no dummy when he pointed to the fact that the devouring mother was one of the major impediments to proper human development. He knew that, looking deep into the darkest families and seeing this proclivity of the overprotective mother to destroy the developing integrity of the child to keep the child infantile, to cling to that relationship instead of developing a life for herself and letting the child go flourish. That's Hansel and Gretel, right? You're lost in the woods. Why? Well, your family's broken up. You have an evil stepmother. So now you're lost in the woods. What's your abuse rate if you have a step parent? 100 times normal. So you're lost in the woods. Well, what happens? Well, you come across a gingerbread house. Well, that's pretty damn convenient. You need a house. It's more than you could even hope for. It's not just a house. It's a house made out of candy. Well, what's inside a house made out of candy? A witch who wants to fatten you up and eat you. And that's the devouring mother, and that's an old fairy tale. Yeah. No kidding. Yeah, and so, we could dwell on that for a minute too. One of the things we won't honestly discuss in our society, one of many, is the fundamental nature of female political psychopathology. And there's male political psychopathology, obviously. That's what the feminists complain about all the time when they talk about the oppressive patriarchy, toxic masculinity. There's no shortage of toxic masculinity. So is there any toxic femininity? Well, not if the feminine is just the, oppressed virgin goddess whose nature. But how about we don't live in that fantasy world?
It's funny. So I feel like we're lucky to have a guy like Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson grew up at a time of the world before the world was getting manipulated by the quote-unquote left-wing agenda. I mean, there's always been agendas and they've always been pushing people in certain directions. But I feel like Jordan lived in a time where strong men meant something and they weren't fucking with the social norms as much. So now we're super lucky to have an individual that has the intellectual capacity that this guy has to be able to articulate his sentences in a certain way and be able to bring up history and facts and make statements in fairly nice, sometimes abrasive ways to be able to start the conversation. Because nowadays, I feel like almost anybody that has the intellectual capacity that he has, which is university for sure, you need to go and be surrounded by intellectuals and textbooks and information and spend probably 8 to 12 years of your life studying and learning different things, which most individuals that go down that path are now going down that path and they're stuck in a system that is almost brainwashing them to think that the leftist agenda is the right way to think, that the whole feminist movement and the alphabet mafia movement and all of these different, new trends that have popped up in the last 5 years, they've really indoctrinated people in the school system and in the college and the university streams to think that way. So that's why when you see these people doing the interviews, like interviewing an NPC or asking people what they think about Andrew Tate or Jordan Peterson, if you see, most of those interviews are conducted on college or university campuses. And I think the reason for everybody thinking in the general typical way on those campuses is because of the indoctrination system, where if you were to come interview an NPC, if you were to come fucking walk onto a construction site with me, the vast majority of people that are out here in the real world think this way, just can't articulate themselves properly and have too much emotional involvement that they get worked up when they speak about something. But the majority of us think along these lines, but we feel like we have no place to speak or anything to say because the internet nowadays is just an echo chamber of fucking propagandic nonsense.
And we know, there's female political pathology, the tendency to infantilize everyone, and the tendency to assume that everyone who doesn't go along with the infantilization is properly characterized as a predator. And so, you wonder, why are the universities turning into extended daycares? Well, a lot of the reason for that is that women who don't have anything better to do are turning the university students into the infants they never had.